Washington Outsider Report on the Coalition Radio. For those newly joining the program, my name is Irina Zuckerman, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider. With us today is Ajmal Sohail, who is a counterterrorism and extremism specialist. He works as an intelligence analyst and specializes in providing counterterrorism analysis. He is highly connected in Afghanistan and other regional forces, providing, and he's able to gain insights into geopolitics from an insider's perspective. And he's also the co-founder and co-president of the Counter-Narcoterrorism Alliance in Germany, where he's directing the intelligence and counter-terrorism portfolios. And today we're here to discuss some of the most complex issues we are seeing today, the alliances, hidden and overt, between different terrorist and extremist groups, state actors. Where is it all going? Why are we ignoring the signs of an impending terrorism issue, the spread of extremist ideology, both in Southeast Asia and in the West? The fact that various extremist and terrorist groups previously in flux or in conflict are joining forces against the West and cooperating with the growing success and on various logistical, operational, and intelligence sharing issues. All of this we'll be discussing today. Thank you so much for joining the Washington Outsider. Ajmal, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this very sensitive and complicated area?
So, greetings from Germany. Thank you very much, Irena, for having me for today's podcast. I think it would be a wonderful opportunity to do some sort of awareness for the people. I mean, in Afghanistan, also in the region, and beside, on the top of that, for the Western countries and the United States in particular, because that was one of the mistake of the United States when they tried to have a light footprint in the region, and or a complete withdrawal or a sudden withdrawal from Afghanistan, without thinking that the extremism and terrorism could be a bigger issue, or it could be a long-term problem for the West and the U.S. in particular. So thank you very much again for having me for today's topic or discussion. Actually, I'm an Afghan by birth, and also spent a lot of time in the Western world, specifically in Europe. And I am focusing on these issues like counterterrorism and counter extremism and counter espionage for a long time, and of course geopolitics as well. But the thing is that why that took my eye or catched my eye to be more focused on the jihadi terrorism. So as you know, that we have different waves of terrorism. That is, for example, the assassination or the assassin wave that was a long before, and then we have the link extremism. Then we have the right extremism or terrorism, and then we have a religious extremism or religious terrorism, and then the final one, the final wave, which is jihadi terrorism, which is of course begun with the Al-Qaeda. So that was really interesting for me, that how it is possible that someone is ready to to blow himself up, to kill himself and to kill the others. That was really interesting, and that is why I try to have a little bit holistic studies on that, and also some practical one. So I joined a couple of universities, like university in Maryland about the extremism or counter violent extremism. And meantime, I also joined another university that is Leiden in the Netherlands, which is about the counterterrorism itself. So that was the sort of thing. And then I thought, why I can't provide the players, whether it is individual, whether this is the researchers, whether it is the universities, or even the corporates, whether the governmental corporates or whatever, to provide them with the opportunity that they have a closer look at what's really gone with the extremism and terrorism, and how it develops to be a sort of a bigger issue, a bigger geopolitical issue in the context of the foreign policy of some countries. And that is why I established my own Substack, which is called the Counter Intelligence and Counterterrorism, which mainly focuses on the jihadi terrorism and these jihadi organizations across the world, specifically in South Asia and also Central Asia, and partly Middle East, and also in Africa. Nowadays, I'm also focusing on Europe because they are now infiltrating the Western society, or the European society as well. So that was the things that took my eyes, or kept my eyes busy with having hand on the actual information or actionable intelligence, and also some holistic studies, holistic research, and academic research. That's why I entered this sphere of counterterrorism and counter extremism.
Well, thank you so much for providing this look into your background, into your interests. And so if you don't mind, we'll get started with a kind of first more general overview of counterterrorism situation, and then we'll get more closely engaged into the specifics related to Afghanistan and to Taliban and its counterparts, both rivals and new partners. So let's talk about Asia, and if you could give us an overview of the current state of counterterrorism efforts across Asia. Who is involved? To what extent are they successful? And do these efforts ever operate at cross purposes?
So in general, we have two ways or two philosophies to counterterrorism, or two ways to counter terrorism. One is the old or traditional way to counter terrorism, which is counterterrorism, and then we have a little bit modern way of counterterrorism. It means a counter-violent extremism. So the counterterrorism is a lot more focused on the capture and kill. So wherever the terrorists are, we have to find them. We have to do some police work and find them, and either to capture them or kill them. In my mind, according to the holistic studies and research, when we do such a things that specifically in Afghanistan, or if we look back to the 20 years of the counterterrorism efforts of the United States and the Western world, we see that we were not very successful in countering the terrorists, because by killing them or by capturing them, not only we destroy them, but the number is increased, and the numbers, double down. If you see that at the very beginning of 2001, when the first time the U.S. robustly entered the counterterrorism efforts in Afghanistan and also in some of the Middle East countries, if you see that the situation and you count the number, or to count the organizations that were involved, so you see that now they are exceeding the number that we expected a lot. What we expected. That is why these counterterrorism, the traditional, does not work, because in Afghanistan, specifically, for example, in Afghanistan or in Pakistan or in Central Asia, it is a little bit, the society is a little bit more like there are some tribal system, or the tribes are living. When one of the member of the family or one of the member of the tribe is killed by specifically by the international counter-terrorist organizations, or you could say the alliance or the US, it means the whole family turns to be a terrorist. However, we had a chance by other means around to keep them away from joining the terrorist organizations. Because when one guy is dead, or one guy is captured, that has an adverse effect, because this is a sort of a grievance that a terrorist organization can employ or apply, and to attract the rest of the society, and telling them, look, what happened today to you, and it may happen to other member of the family. And so before it is too late, we have to join and we have to protect. So this is a way of providing with a protection and a better solution against the the intruders in their eyes, or someone, the crusader, whatsoever you call it. Therefore, my research and also some other research shown that this is not the best possible way. So the best possible way to counter extremist counter violent extremism. So the counter violent extremism, it's a 4-pillar. The first pillar is like intervention, then we enter the prevention, and then we talk about the rehabilitation, and then we talked about the reintegration. So the 4-pillar, or the 4 phases we have to pass. Not only we stop terrorism, we could prevent terrorism, but we could, those who are already terrorists or extremists, we could turn them back, or rehabilitate them, and then bring them back to the society to have a normal life. So if you see the situation from the counter-terrorism, counter-extremism point, and you see that the situation worsened in the West, in West Asia and in South Asia, and also in Central Asia. And the other problem is actually it is tripled by the U.S. less interest in counterterrorism, because they have some other engagements. At a bigger level, they have engagements, and they simply turn down on the efforts of the counterterrorism. And that is why that gave the terrorist organization and the extremist organizations a new life. And then they thought that the U.S. is a lot more busy with some other thing, and now it is time to inhale and get ready for the next term. And that is why you see this situation is quite different than the 2001 at the very beginning, when the U.S. tried to enter the geopolitics of South Asia and Central Asia to counter terrorists. And now we see that it is expanding day to day, and even there are some like safe havens, specifically Afghanistan, a part of the Pakistan, a part of Iran, and also some part of the Central Asian country. This is a safe haven for them, not only to be trained, to be provided with the financial support, and also with other opportunities, and getting ready for a sort of I call it a reiteration of the 9/11.
So we are seeing that the Western countries, they tend to rely more on a very traditional counterterrorism approach, and there seems to be a lack of coordination on trying to create a consensus between these two different approaches in light of these conflicting cultural issues, and also the evolving field of terrorism itself. Given all of that, do you think this is what the terrorist groups are taking advantage of? And if so, who are the major terrorist groups who are benefiting from these vulnerabilities and these divergent approaches in Asia? And how have they evolved, both just in general in terms of their own vision, and also in terms of their ability to kind of take advantage of the failures in counterterrorism?
To be honest, what the U.S. policy and the U.S. specifically on counterterrorism. So what's going on in Afghanistan, or partly in South Asia or Central Asia? The first thing is they have a vision of they differ or differentiate, or they classify the threats in 2 categories. The first category is the near threat, and then we have the far threat. So what is going on in Afghanistan? They think it is a far threat. Therefore, they don't concentrate a lot on that. And they think that Afghanistan is miles away from the U.S. territory, or from the European countries. This is the second strategic point for the United States from the geostrategic point of view. So they think that is the far threat. Therefore, it should be left alone, and they shouldn't concentrate a lot. For the United States, what is more important at the moment is a near threat. A near threat is possibly like what's really going on inside the country or at the border of the United States. That like European country, for the European countries, like dealing with the refugee crisis or the economic crisis or the economic downturn or sanctions. These are a lot more. I mean, sounds louder as a counterterrorism or counterterrorism efforts. And then, of course, for the Europe, there is another issue like Ukraine, which is more, I mean, a near threat for Europe, and so is for the United States of America. If you see that when Biden is going to the Congress and he's asking for support for the financial support, so the three more obvious objects are there. The objectives are there. The first is, for example, war in Ukraine, then the war, the possible war or the bigger war that could happen in the Middle East. Of course, they're concentrating on Israel, and then partly to Taiwan, because there is a possibility of the Chinese attack on it. So if you see that the American foreign policy and foreign aid and concentrations is a lot more on these issues, and they simply forgotten the counterterrorism efforts. And then if you see that for the United States, that's what's going on in Afghanistan or elsewhere, it's a little bit, they also differ or classify or categorize the war and conflict in three categories. The first is like a local conflict, then a regional or interstate conflict, and then they think of the global conflict. Or you could say it, that is they differ the threats into the perceived threat and also the real threat, and then existential threat. So for the United States, terrorism or these extremism is no longer a real threat for the United States to destroy, for example, the United States, or to attack, because they think that their counter-terrorist organizations like CIA or any other organizations, they are ready enough, and this is not would be the same like situation like the 9/11, because it was a surprise attack. Nobody thought that such a thing would happen. But in a passage of 20 years, they are ready in terms of the policies, in terms of the efforts whatsoever, and that is why they simply think that's a perceived threat, and they think it may or may not happen. But for them, as a real threat is, of course, Russia is a real threat, and what's going on in the Middle East, it is a real threat that could harm or could threaten the U.S. Geopolitical interest. That is why they are focusing a lot. And then the third thing is, which is the existential threat. So they never think that the terrorism could be as an existential threat for the United States, other than China or possibly the cooperation between China and Russia. That is why they are thinking on that. And the terrorist organizations and those who are running these terrorist organizations, they are taking advantage of these gaps of the foreign policy of the United States, and they think it is the right opportunity for us to get in. And that is why, if you see that this situation is worsened in the region, specifically in Afghanistan, and on top of that, the two main organizations are active enough in the region. It is the Al-Qaeda Central, and then we have, for example, the ISIS-K. The ISIS-K is a little bit different, because it is a little bit hard in contrast to the ISIS Central, because the ISIS Central was more interested to focus on the areas, and they want to conquer areas and in countries like territories. But the ISIS-K is not interested in conquering the territories. Rather, they are invisible. So countering this organization, which is invisible, which you cannot see them, or you cannot feel them, or you cannot track them, that would be a little bit complicated, because as Musa al-Suri said, don't bring the people to the training training camps, rather bring the training camps to the people. It means they are much more active through the media outlets, I mean specifically social media and also darknet, and they do all sort of the operation training, radicalization courses, and everything they do it without going to the people or without bringing to the people and make it obvious for the counter-terrorist organization to attack them or counter it. That is why it's a little bit complicated. For me, from my point of view, in comparison to the other terrorist organizations, I mean, the ISIS-K is one of the robust terrorist organization, which is really evolved from time to time, and secondly, it developed its strategy and warfare. So they have some 6 pillars of this warfare. Like the first thing is they attack any country they think in the region or beyond the region, the economic infrastructure. The first thing is they attack the economic infrastructure. They wanna just paralyze the infrastructure. They don't lose the opportunity for the country or for any other group to take advantages of these economic infrastructure. The second thing is, like, in terms of the in comparison to the other terrorist organizations, they try to kill as many like civilians as possible. From one point of view, there was a soft objectives for them, or and secondly, when there would be more, I mean, civilians died or killed down the road, the people will uprise against the government, and then government will be pressured. But when you see that their operation in Afghanistan specifically, they don't go to kill civilians as many as possible, but rather they're trying to focus on the high-profile Taliban commanders. They think if so many people are died for the Taliban, it doesn't make a difference, because for the Taliban what is important that those who are operating within the system, within their group, and that is why they're trying to kill those who are really I mean, put pressure on them. And then, of course, what else we have it, like the use the urbanized terrorism. They operate in the cities, in the bigger cities, cosmopolitan cities and big cities. Like you see that in Moscow they did, and now today we see that in Dagestan what they did. And then in the meantime, they go to the rural areas and they operate there as well. And then, of course, what else is important than they attacking the international representative, whether it is in terms of the diplomatic representation, whether it's economic or whatever. They're trying to focus on the international community or their representation to kill them as many as possible, to attack them as much as possible. That down the road, they would be pushed away from specifically like Afghanistan and Pakistan to invest in terms of the economic or political engagement or diplomatic engagement. And the other issue is that, which is really important, is the cross-border terrorism. So you see that in terms of the Al-Qaeda, I mean, efficiency is a little bit questions when you compare it with the ISIS-K, because ISIS-K today they attack some points in Afghanistan, and the next day you see they do the same in Pakistan, and then in Iran, and then in Central Asia, in Bayan, even in Russia and elsewhere. So that is why, according to my knowledge and my research, I came up with that the ISIS-K is one of the robust and strong, and it is difficult to be countered.
So I'll get to the point about these international attacks in a little while, but for now I wanted to focus on the fact that this is nothing new. On the one hand, these organizations propose a very, very traditional fundamentalist view of religion and society. On the other hand, they're very quick to embrace innovation in technology for tactical reasons. So what role is technology playing in these conflicts? How are these organizations adapting to the latest? And for instance, AI, do you see Al-Qaeda, which was quick to embrace, cell phones, computers, the internet back in the day, do you see them using the methods used by sophisticated state and state-adjacent actors, deepfakes, voice cloning, combining counter these intelligence methods with traditional terrorism planning?
First of all, I think we shouldn't underestimate the terrorist organizations. They simultaneously work on three topics. The first thing is like psychological terrorism. Those from the psychological point of view, they are opposing a government or a ruling society, whatever. So they are trying to convince them as much as possible to get in their group. And then, of course, then we talk about the tactical terrorism. So for the tactical reasons, some of the people are for the tactical operations. They are invited, or they are joining the group or persuaded to join a group. And then, of course, we have the ideological terrorism, that those who are ideologically want to have or to join a specific organization. And the media outlets is really important. Has contributed a lot in persuading the people to join the terrorist organizations. Actually, the idea is like these mass information, the provision of mass information on the social media or in the internet whatsoever, or through this technology. In the society, the people, we have different strata of the society, or different kind of people with a different thinking. They know that a lot of the people, specifically in Asia countries, they are not in a position to think, critical, in a position of critical thinking. So for a critical thinking, you have to read something, and then you have to process this, and then you have to, for example, make some sort of hypothesis, and then at the end you come up with the conclusion, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, or whether it works for me, or whether it does not work for me. But then the people like countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, things like that, so the radicalization process is a little bit easier, because as I said, the people are not thinking like critical. So the first thing is they are information cognitive. So information cognitive means they don't have enough information. For example, when I tell you, my mommy, when I have a fever, when I have pain, she always tells me that I have to take some sort of like paracetamol or an analgesic that is good for the painkiller or fever. She has only this information, whether she has read it somewhere or whether she has received this information for anybody, that this is good for fever, against the fever, or against the pain, but she does not know the side effects of that. For having the side effects, or to know the side effects, only information is not enough. We have to have the knowledge of that. So this information cognitive, the people who face information cognitive, they don't have the knowledge to think and process it, whether it is good or bad, or what would be the consequences. They simply persuaded, or they are convinced with some sort of misinformation or disinformation. And that is why the people are joining that. And then when you enter a group, and then you have to keep to remain in the group, or to keep up with your life in the group, you have to, this is called the in-group cognitive. For the group principles, for the group, rules and regulations, you have to accept what I said. And the last part is the confirmation cognitive. So the leader of the group, or the someone who is representing the group, he tells something for the rest of the members of the group, whatever from Sunnah or from Quran, or combined from Sharia, that this is okay and this is not good and this is bad. And that is why these people are joining. And this is made through the how can I say, this technology. But today's technology is far more, because we have AI, that they use simply AI for that reason, and also blockchain technology. So whenever like they want to do some sort of a fundraising, they simply they put their products simply like digital products on their blockchain, and they want to collect funding for, and simply they say, for example, we want to collect fund for jihad in Afghanistan, and that is set. And within hours, they received like thousands till millions. And the issue is, because this blockchain technology, it has one center. Even the center cannot regulate unless like that would be the time for the CIA to get in with a supercomputer to delay a product or to let a product go. And then they have another opportunity. You might have heard of this, the Internet Archive. Even they put something, for example, on a, how can I say, on Facebook, or also on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. So they immediately copy that to the Internet Archive. If the management of Facebook or Twitter wanna delete this information, they put it on the Twitter, but it will still remain in the archive of the internet. So whenever you one of their colleagues wanna just look at it, they simply could find it there. And then they have this opportunity through the AI. They don't need to translate each and everything for each languages. You just simply go there. They would be translated automatically for 100 languages or 100 languages plus. That is why it is really interesting for them to use the AI technology. But from the counterterrorism point of view, of course, technology is again, I mean, something to be matter, because we have two possibilities of the first thing is the like SIGINT. We have the signal intelligence that this opportunity for the counter-terrorist organization like the intelligence, the best intelligence organization, they could, I mean, find out what's going on, what is, I mean, shared through the internet, whatsoever they can get it. And then, of course, we have another, I mean, possibility to use the technology like geospatial intelligence. From geospatial intelligence, whatever like they are operating, you can find it. And then we have imagery intelligence for terrorist organization, when for counter-terrorist organization, when a terrorist organization simply upload or post a picture or a clip of a video. So if you go to the from imagery intelligence or from the geospatial intelligence, you could simply find what could be spot, and then you could find it at this organization, and you could counter it. But there is a huge but. These terrorist organizations even use a very classical or old school methods. Even like the time that during the Cold War, and even before the Cold War, I mean, right after the, I mean, Second World War, or during the Second World War, when the two, I mean, strong intelligence organizations like KGB and CIA, they used the drop that they simply use the same method, because they think that working through the technology that may be somehow found out by the counter-terrorist organization. That is why when today they are communicating, they simply put whatsoever in a for example in a memory card or things like that, and put it in something that is really disgusting, and leave it anywhere in the park, on the street, and somewhere. And those who are told to pick it up, and they pick it and take this information, and then they communicate in this way. So this is a little bit complicated for the counter-terrorist organization to focus on the counterterrorism, and that is why they took the advantage. And then you see that there is a boom in terms of the terrorist, I mean, development across the world, specifically in South Asia and Central Asia.
So you're seeing this increasingly sophisticated force that's using the modern technology in the most sophisticated way. I think, but you know, it's not that their technology skills are not being taken seriously. It's the fact that they're still seen as a long-term threat. That said, I think it's arguable when you have technology amplifying your recruitment efforts, amplifying your communication efforts, you are much more likely to become an immediate threat faster than when you don't have access to these amplification methods, and then it is a serious risk factor. But that gets back to me exactly how these major geopolitical actors, such as United States and Russia, how are they involved and influenced in counterterrorism operations in Asia? And are they really all that involved? Or is the focus so much more right now on the great power competition that counterterrorism for these particular countries is not really such a big factor at the moment?
I think it's a matter of interest. As I mean, during the Cold War, so at that time when the Soviet Union they talk about the mercenaries or these tactical terrorist organizations or extremist organizations employed by the CIA to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan. And that time for the CIA and for the US, they were freedom fighters. And it is vice versa. Today it is changed or it is switched. And today's terrorist organizations is possibly for the US, they are terrorist organizations, but for for Russia, they would have been, or they could have been like freedom fighters to fight the U.S. and to get rid of the U.S. specifically in terms of the Taliban. And you see that the U.S. was in Afghanistan to fight Taliban, but the Iran countries like Iran and Russia, they supported Taliban because they had a common enemy. The common enemy was like the U.S. and the Western societies and mainly like NATO. To challenge NATO, they try to support the Taliban. And today you see that they're still in contact, and their contact or their cooperation flourished. And this is the same as I said before for the U.S. According to the U.S. national security priorities, counterterrorism is no longer a national security priority because their national security priority is the first thing is the sea lane communications, because they still wanna have control on the seas, on the sea lane, because they still, however, it is a little bit challenging for the US because the Chinese are now, the Chinese Navy is now in play, but still the US manage the, how can I say, water superiority. And the US water superiority gives this opportunity for the rest of the world, specifically for the Europeans, to rely on the US, for the US interest to cooperate with the US. And that is why the US still wanna have hand on this superiority, or to keep it at least for quite some time. And then of course we talk about the air superiority or the air supremacy. The US air supremacy is still beyond question because it is more advanced in collaborate. In comparison to the China and also to Russia. And of course, the ground superiority is as well. The American superiority ground is not questionable. They have more than 1,000 military bases across the world. So no country in the world has a specific or such a huge number of bases abroad. So China would have one in Djibouti or one in Pakistan. The Russia could have in a part of the Central Asian countries like Tajikistan, and also in Syria in the Middle East. But this is the only American bases across the world, and they still dominate. 2/3 of the whole world. But for the US, that is why the US is think that the counterterrorism is not a big issue. And then of course for the US is what more is important, like as I said at the very beginning, like the number one enemy or number one geopolitical adversary, which is China. They have to focus on China as well, and also on Russia, instead of focusing on terrorist organization. And then of course there is another matter of the critical materials which are used in high tech. It is really critical. It is rare. And any country which has this chip industry, so of course the US is on the top, because the Japan, then we call it Taiwan, and then we have South Korea, and then of course the United States itself. They have the huge chip industry, and this chip industry, they need these real rare earth material or these critical materials. And they think the next war would be on these critical materials because they are used in high tech. So that is why they're focusing on that, and they simply leave the counterterrorism. And that is like a lifeline for the terrorist organizations to inhale and say, oh, God, thanks, the US is busy elsewhere. From China point of view, from Russian point of view, the terrorist organizations are still not of focus, because their efforts would be like divided if they focus on a counterterrorism. If they focus on a counterterrorism, then the fight against Ukraine, that would be a little bit difficult for them, and also their presence in the Middle East, that would be a little bit difficult for them to survive. So that is why they simply do not, focus on the counterterrorism. Rather, both countries, the United States and also Russia, they wanna delegate the war on terror, or the battle on on terrorism. They want to delegate it. They want to use some proxies for. When the United States want to counter like ISIS, they simply go to the Taliban, or they go to some other extremist organization to do whatever the United States wants. And this is the same like the Russians want, and the same like Iranian want. And they don't want to be involved directly to counter these organizations. And that is why you see that when you turn from direct engagement to the proxy engagement, that will give opportunity for the terrorist organizations to develop and to evolve.
So a lot going on there. It's very obviously that of course, these organizations will take advantage of a vacuum of attention. And quite frankly, I'm not entirely sure that the chip war, which you mentioned, is irrelevant to counterterrorism. Because imagine if this type of technology makes its way to terrorist organizations through corruption in countries that develop them, or because some of these organizations become mercenaries for state-backed agenda, or because they're looking for process to make money and to enter the process of sanctions busting and accumulating components that they can sell off to state actors, to just or make this war part of their terrorism effort. Imagine terrorist organization accosting and disrupting supply chain lines. So that front in counterterrorism, I think, leaves a lot of possibilities that we are not really confronting. But so far, but all of that still is in the future. But let's talk about now. What are the main challenges faced by intelligence agencies in gathering actionable intelligence, given that Asia is a diverse and complex place with different regions, with different tribal societies, sectarian issues and concerns, and a mixture of state and non-state factors in the picture?
So I think the main challenge would be like how the terrorist organizations are working. So we have different phases how they manage to attack, or they manage to operate. The first thing is, of course, like surveillance. They do it. They do, for example, gathering information about a specific point, and then they do like security tests. Then they do like how can I say, like operation, like they do it to get together and to simulate the point or the area they want to attack. And then of course there would be like provision of these logistical support and things like that. And then the fighters who are relevant to the area to operate, and finally they would be in a position to operate. This is the way that they are doing it in that case. But the issue is from the counterterrorism point of view, especially in Asia. In the US, they have a bunch of the opportunity, like from spotting in assets within a terrorist organization, and then to develop a relation with that guy or with the assets, and then recruiting them, and then working with them from time to time, and then finally like a sort of a cooperation. But that would be a little bit difficult with the counter-terrorist organizations are operating in Asian countries. They don't have this capacity. They don't have this opportunity to focus on all these things that is make it possible for them. And the other thing is, if you go to, for example, counterterrorism from the Pakistan point of view or from the Afghan point of view, the issue is that the radicalizations, most of these organizations, they are like intelligence organizations like ISI. There are a bunch of people, they are already radicalized, because the Cold War, this era, that turned the people to be individually radicalized. If you see a couple of years ago, that was like Salman Taseer, one of the minister of Pakistani minister, and he was killed by his own bodyguard. He has to protect him, his body, but he was killed by his own bodyguard. The issue was that he was radicalized, whether through the social media or through this radicalization process for long before. And that is why when you're talking to them, like asking them to counter these terrorist organizations, and then you see that they share the similar ideologies, whether it is a Salafi ideology, whether it is like a Deobandi ideology, whatever. That is make it a little bit complicated. So if you ask the Afghan Taliban to get rid of the TTP, and maybe they would be, their state policy would be, or their foreign policy, or their official policy would be to not allow the TTP to operate in Afghanistan. But when you go to the insiders then, and the assets or the guys they're operating within the group, they share the similar ideology, and that is why they don't want to get rid of these TTP. And the same is like if you ask them to encounter, for example, ISIS-K in Afghanistan or in the region, the official policy would be, yeah, we're right, we have to do it. But people within that, they share the same ideology, and they think, oh, they are better than to like the Western ideology, or the capitalism, or liberalism, you could call it, or communism, you call it. That is why it is better, and it makes it a little bit complicated for the counter-terrorist organization, and on the top of it, for the intelligence organizations to counter terrorism. And the other thing is, as I said, so from the U.S. point of view, it was easier, because if you count on CIA, like a annual budget of CIA is exceeding like $50 billion. I'm not quite sure, but I read and I heard from some people that the annual budget of the CIA is $50 billion. So $50 billion is more than the defense budget of the country, a huge country like India. It's still less than $50 billion. If you go to the Russia defense budget, it is around or between $50 to $60 billion. So it means that one institution in the US is the annual budget is exceeding even a couple of other countries in the region. This is another, matter of the lack of the budget or lack of the money to counter terrorist organizations. And that is why it is a little bit difficult for the intelligence organizations to counter them. And as I said, they are now trying to a way that to focus on turning to the proxies. And I have actually for using these terrorist organizations as like proxies, that I have really some sort of documents and some sort of like photos and videos. So if you give me the opportunity to turn on my
Yes.
then I will show you a video of the Russian and Taliban cooperation. That would be the first time that your audience will see such a movie where the Russian GRU are operating in Afghanistan with the Taliban, and meantime, they are like making the geospatial intelligence devices and second intelligence devices operable in Afghanistan in terms of the countering like ISIS-K. So let us see this movie together, and then we will see that what is the okay, so I will turn it on. The Russian.
Я знаю, я не надо. Я вчера налетал после пиздец оптовиков.
You see it now?
Yes, now I see it.
So
Блядь, все заняты, мне придет. Я знаю, я не надо. Я вчера налетал после пиздец оптовиков. У меня руки, блядь, все заняты, мне придется его положить, видишь? Невозможно переключить без камеры во время фотографирования. Да. Идете это сейчас? Выйдет из режима автоматически.
You got it?
Yep.
So this is the one, and then there is another one, how they are like actually how they were able, the Taliban and Iranian together, how to like launch this October 7 attack in Israel. And if you see that, that would be really, I mean, that is beyond imagination. That's how the Taliban and also these Iranians and Pakistani cooperated to launch an attack on Israel and to discuss a thing like that. That's really amazing. So let us this run. Yeah. So you see this? This is Kaani, the Quds leader. These are some Iranian generals. So you see that is the other issue, that how they launched the whole operation in Israel. So it means there was a cooperation between Pakistan, Iran, and also meantime the Taliban. And there is another thing like about the there was another like cooperation between the Taliban and also the other terrorist organizations, you could call it. Like they have a training center, Taliban and Al-Qaeda training center.
الفاتح معسكر د دې لاسته راوړنو یوه ځلانده نمونه ده. په الفاتح معسکر کې چې د عسکري تعلیماتو او تدریباتو یو معتبر او پرمختللی مرکز دی، په بېلابېلو فنونو کې استشهادیانو او مجاهدینو ته زده کړه او روزنه ورکول کېږي، او هر کال یې له تعلیماتو او تدریباتو څخه سلګونه استشهادیان او مجاهدین د فراغت ویاړ ترلاسه کوي. په الفاتح معسکر کې وخت په وخت پوځي رسم گذشت، تمرینات او نمایشات ترسره کیږي. د سږ کال پوځي رسم گذشت، تمرینات او نمایشات له خپلواکۍ او ګران هیواد څخه د دفاع ویاړ ته ځانګړي شوي دي. موږ باید په تیرو 20 کلونو کې د امریکا په مشرۍ د لویدیځو یرغلګرو او د دوی د مزدورانو پر ضد پر خپلې سیاسي او پوځي جهادي مبارزې وویاړو. درنو ګډونوالو د استشهادیانو بېلابېل ټولۍ چې بېلابېلې محاربوي دندې سرته رسوي او له اعداد څخه په بریالیتوب فارغ شوي دي د نظامي کمیسیون د محترم هیئت په حضور کې به په خاص ډسپلین سره پوځي رسم ګذشت او د پوځي مهارتونو او تکتیکونو نمایشات ترسره کړي ان شاء الله تعالی.
آرام سای تیار سای سای گل موضوع قدم وړاندې مر
So you see that this is the like Al-Qaeda and also this Taliban together. This is the suicide training camp. And you see that their number is, I mean, exceeding thousands. They are thousands of them are trained. And I think that would be a huge issue in international affairs, that you will see that when they are trained and they're ready to participate in international level. And then of course I could see some of the they are trained in Afghanistan and they reached like a Middle East countries. And if you see this,
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم وبركاته. Mi surera, dona urera, mi sulta inshallah. Salamin wa aftar mubarak. Dona robaita inshallah. Aftar mubarak. Assalamu alaikum برادران طالبان. اثر زمینستان تا زمین افغانستان. عیدتون مبارک شود. السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. دا ټول رئیس الاسلام مبارک خواږه مبارکي ورکوو. وزخاص كده أفغانستان دي إسلامي مرات جايين تا. السلام عليكم. اللهم بارك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
And then of course we have like some of their like hideouts inside Afghanistan. There would be this. You see?
Mm-hmm.
Their hideouts inside some caves, some holes they built. This is from the Al-Qaeda time, when they were the Second World War. I mean, they were Cold War. They are still operating and they are there. And I would like to also show some like more documents of that specifically the Iranian Taliban and Hamas, Iranian Taliban and Hezbollah. Oh. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see? Yeah. The Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas Palestine. This is from October 2023. So this is about how the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, because the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is still known, they don't have like a stamp of the Islamic Emirate, rather they have the old stamp of that. You see that they have discussed how to defend Gaza and how to operate and to cooperate with this resistant force, the Hamas in Palestine. And then if we move to another page, it is of course another one. It is also about the cooperation between the Taliban and this, you see this Quds. This is the sign of the Quds organization, like Sardar Muhammad Kazemi. You know that Sartib, it means Sartib, he is the Lieutenant General Muhammad Kazemi, who is the deputy of Quds forces. So they have, and this is the Taliban, like Al-Hajj Hafiz Abdul Qayyum Zakir. You might have heard of Qayyum Zakir. So it means they have signed a document that how to support, to send istishhadi or this, to fund Jihad Tufan al-Aqsa. This Tufan al-Aqsa, which was, the name of the operation of Hamas, and you see that's in Farsi in a real term. So, and they have signed a document that is in 2023, in October 19. So they signed a document how to send these to support or to provide the opportunity for Palestinians to send the Afghan, suicide bombers to the area to support the whole system. And you see that is duly signed by them. And then you see that this is their training places, that how these the people who got ready to fight in Gaza, they are trained like this. And then you see other of them, they are trained in this way. And then you see some other of them, like you see that Afghanistan, this is the people who are fighting on behalf of Afghanistan. That is the like 5.11. I really don't know, but this is like a brigade of 5.11 who are fighting in Gaza and also in Lebanon and Syria on behalf of the Afghan Taliban. So you see them. This is the way they fought the war there. And then and also I want to show you as well about how they also operate in like with Al-Shabaab and also in Africa.
الحمدلله زه دې الله تعالی نه ډېر روزیه چې الله تعالی زه فدایي عملیات ته تیار کړل. 2.5 کاله انتظار مو وکړ، بس ملګري وو چې تللی مې ډېر غه و چې میږ عملیات نه برابرېږي، خو الحمدلله هېڅ د میږ عملیات ټیمر نږدې دی. انشاءالله میږ به د پاکستان مرتد خواسته دستگذار ورکوي انشاءالله تعالی، چې دی په پاکستان کو دستگذار انشاءالله نه وي راغلی. انشاءالله دستگذار میږ پاکستان مرتد خواسته ورکوي، دی به یې ساتي انشاءالله تعالی. الله خپل میر پلور ته مې دا پیغام دی چې تاسې مو په شهادت کله خبر شئ نو تاسې خفه کېږئ مه. الله تعالی ته 2 رکعته د شکري نفل وکړه چې الله تعالی دې مو ته د فدایي عملیات نصیب کړل، او دې په باره کې د دوی د شکري نفل وکړو چې بالکل خفګان خدای ونه کړو. د پاکستان پوځ ته مې دا پیغام دی چې تر څو پورې په پاکستان کې جمهوري کفري نظامي تر هغه وخت پورې چې استشهاد جهاد انشاءالله جاري وي، تر هغه وخت پورې مې جهاد جاري وي چې تر څو پورې په پاکستان کې شرعي نظام نه وي روغلی.
السلام علیکم. ورته مې دا پیغام دی چې دی چې کله د مباشرت خبر شي دی د خفه کېږي.
So this is the major thing that I try to show that what's really going on in Afghanistan. So this is the situation is really scary, which is and at the end of the day, when the US really realized that they had a huge mistake, they all of a sudden left Afghanistan without thinking twice that these organizations would be used by the Iranians, as I have shown you the video clips of how the Quds with the Taliban and the intelligence organizations of the region cooperate, and then also played out the Russians, the Russian GRU is cooperating with the Taliban to use them and provide them with the training, things like that. And then you see that they are cooperation with the terrorist organizations, whether they are local or regional terrorist organizations, or they're international organizations like Al Qaeda and also ISIS-K. So I think for the U.S., it is the time to rethink its efforts in concern of the counterterrorism.
So you also, what was that last video that you showed me? The guy kept talking about Pakistan, but of course I couldn't understand what he was saying.
So they were the TTP, like Hamza Brigade.
Mm-hmm.
Hamza Brigade is one of the Taliban. Of course, it is trained by Al Qaeda. This is the suicide brigade. They are mainly operating in the tribal area of Pakistan. They said our war or our battle will continue until this how can I say, this infidel government in Pakistan, which is in place, or a secular government which is in a place that would be exchanged with the Sharia government, our battle will continue. So this is what he said. And they're really, as I said before, the Afghan Taliban foreign policy is not relevant to what the TTP is talking about, because there is still a close ties and close cooperation between Islamabad and Kabul, and between Islamabad or between Rawalpindi and also Kandahar.
Mm-hmm.
As I said before, these two people at the lower level, they fought the war against American and against against NATO in Afghanistan for the last 20 to 22 years. And they are intermarried, and I mean, they exchange, like some of them, they have joint families, and they share a lot. Not only they share border, they share culture, they share ideology, and they share a lot of cultural and a lot of social principles. And that is why for them to get rid of TTP or to divorce themselves from TTP, it's impossible. And therefore, they are collaborating with one another, of course, without the safe haven in Afghanistan to be provided for TTP to operate, to be trained, and to be financed. It is impossible that they could do anything in Pakistan. As I said, the official policy is, without any question, that is about the countering the terrorists or having the joint interest. But at the lower level, these people sharing the similar ideology, the similar like tenets, the similar principles, and that is why it makes it a little bit impossible for both Taliban and also for the Pakistani forces to get rid of the of TTP. So the thing is that they said they are ready for sacrifice, and he said we will continue. He said he waited for the moment to be blown up himself. That was a long time, and finally his turn came, and he said that when you hear that I took a suicide attack, don't worry, I am in heaven, and also I have to do something for right and not something for wrong. And that is why don't worry. Even he said about his family, he's totally don't worry. What I'm doing is the mission that it should be accomplished. And if you see the result of that, and then you find really some people that they achieved some things. So let me show you another movie of that.
صل على رسوله الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قاتلوهم يعذبهم الله بأيديكم وينصركم عليهم ويشفي صدور قوم مؤمنين Allah Ta'ala په قرآن کې فرمایي آیات شریف مفهوم ده چې د توس په لیدو سره عذاب درکوه چې توس ته د مسلمان مؤمنین او سینې ته ټنډه پراخوي نو محترم مجاهدین مسلمانانو ورنه دا د هغه پاکستان مرتد واجب القتل دا د هغه غنیمتونه دي چې تارین شپه مجاهدین د کارا کولو سره د تمر په کلی کې پیغام پښتون عملیات ترسره کول د مجاهدینو د ارتاق نه دای ته دا خبر ورسېد نو د مجاهدینو پر سوال نه مخکې د خپل پوسټې پریس وي او دا غنایم یې پریس و مجاهدین ته الحمدلله د پاک پافیت سره فتح نصیب کړه دا دای پر دګینه دی وردای دي دا کمربندي نه وکړي د پاکستان مرتد حکومت دي دا د ستاول کاشینه دي دا په پیسې نه وکړي او دا چې د کې مسلمان د مظلوم خور دی وګورنه دی دا وبسلې نو د مجاهدین الحمدلله په هر ځای کې شه د مظلوم امت سره ویلوړ دي دا د یاد کړه هغه چې د مجاهدین ولسته چولې نن الحمدلله چې مجاهدین ولسته لپاره د غنیمت ورکړي دا نور سماینه دا څه وکړي چې په دا ولدې څومره مظلوم مسلمانان غوړولي دا د تصویرون دي او دا بیټری او دا موبایلونه څنګه الحمدلله لپاره کافیت سره مجاهدین ته ولسته ورکړي دا سماینه څه نه دا موږ ټول مجاهدین ته او ټول مظلوم امت ته دا مبارکي ورکړي او ان شاء الله چې مسلمان سره سره لږ در حمایت وکړي نو الله پاک ان شاء الله دې وسینه ته دا شی ټنډه کړستوي نو دا ظالمون الله پاک دې په لسته سره ختم کوي ان شاء الله مل مهنت تر هغه وخت پر جاری وي چې څو پر پټول مرګ شي اسلامي نظام نه وروغله صدق الله.
So again, he's talking about he's showing that about their achievements, and he's telling that those people who were at the very beginning, he says it is he said he recited some verses of Holy Quran and said you have to continue your battle until that you turn the society to or you make the society to accept or the individuals to accept Islam totally or Sharia totally. And that is why they said our war or our battle will continue. And he also shown that his achievement or their achievement, that how they were able to destroy some of the bases of the Pakistani soldiers or the Pakistani army. And he also shown all this their belonging that they now is under their control. And again, he says that would be continue until the country like Pakistan will be under or operate under the flag of Islam. And you see how decisive they are, and that is only, as I said, I'm coming back to the main point that is because of the U.S. ignorance or I mean, how can I say, those who are running the foreign policy of the United States, and they simply underestimate the terrorist organizations, and they think that the huge or the global or existential threat for the United States would be China. Of course, that is, and they underestimate the terrorist organizations. If they think or they like Afghanistan, they were able to take over of the country, and they inspired like TDB to take over in Pakistan, and then of course there would be like in Bangladesh, there would be to take over in Bangladesh and in Sri Lanka, they will take over, and then I think this war will continue, this battle will continue. So country by country and society by society, they would be inspired, and then you will see that most of the areas and today is in the hand of like or operate under the some sort of a democratic principles, democratic norms, and then they will simply leave the place for for the terrorist organization or extremists to take over their government. So that was I think, from the U.S. foreign policy drivers, it was great to not to be engaged in so many fronts, and it is understandable, but the simply turning blind eyes toward the extremist organizations, that would be a blowback or would be a huge setback for the U.S. if not in a short term, but would be in a long term a huge, setback for the U.S. Interest in foreign policy.
I mean, this is obviously not a good trend, because we want these people fighting among each other, not uniting fronts. And you also mentioned the connection to Al-Shabaab. How did that come about, and what are their interests, and how could they and how are they even cooperating together given their geographic disparity?
So I am trying to. I have actually, but I don't know why this doesn't play out. I don't know it, but okay. Let me try the other way around. So I will go to open. Then I will. Oh. So actually, this issue is I cannot open this picture because I want what I provide is not only a claim. It is not only just to be a sort of imagination, but it is. I would like to provide enough evidence that what's going on. You see this guy? This is Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the Taliban flag. This is in Africa. And again, you see this guy, the same guy. This is Mullah Yaqub, the defense minister of the Taliban. And this is the same guy. Let's check it out. This is the same guy. This is now Africa. So their operation are two things. The first thing is Al-Shabaab is a branch of a branch of the. However, the Al-Qaeda Central is an umbrella organization. Under this organization, two kind of other terrorist organizations are operating. One is like a huge terrorist organization like Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, and also like Hayat al-Tahrir al-Sham, which are not directly fighting under the flag or under the command of the Al-Qaeda. They are like a de facto, or you could call it they are semi-independent, but still the ideology they share, the tactics they share, the modus operandi they share, the financial resources they share, and even their inner group cooperation they share. And then we have local like terrorist organizations like TDP, like Taliban, like Ansarullah Tajikistan, the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, or East Turkestan Islamic movement. They are local organizations. They are operating at a local level. And that is why when the Taliban are cooperating with the Al-Qaeda Central, then this make it possible for them to be introduced either to Hayat al-Tahrir al-Sham, which I've shown you the other video. The Afghan Taliban are operating in Syria, and then in the meantime, the Afghan Taliban are operating in Africa. So there is a conjunction between them from the ideological point of view, or also interstructure activity they have. But beside what else is this, the more important is the Afghan Taliban are providing the Al-Shabaab and also Boko Haram with the drugs and narcotics, which is produced in Afghanistan. And they want to try with their nexus like the Al-Shabaab has close cooperation because Africa is a little bit near to European continent, like specifically to like Italy and also a part of the some African countries are just a few kilometers or a few miles away from Europe, and that is why when they are collaborating with each other, then the whole, I mean, these drug cartels or the drugs, loads are moving to Africa, and the Al-Shabaab in cooperation with the European-based criminal, organized criminal organizations. They are working together and bring the Afghan drugs to Africa, and from Africa they're moving these drugs to Europe and sell them and then make money. And also in return, what the Taliban are doing it as well, they are like selling a lot of Afghan or the US left or the NATO left weaponry in Afghanistan, the most modern technology in terms of the ground warfare. They left in Afghanistan, and then they sell them to Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram. In return, they receive like natural resources like diamond. And the Taliban, then they cooperate with the British, with the Indian, with the Iranian, with the Middle East, like criminal organizations, and sell these diamond, and they process the diamond to the real, to the official product, and sell them in an international market for a huge amount of money. So this is the way they are cooperating. And also the Taliban provide them, because they have a lot of training centers in Afghanistan, the Al-Qaeda Taliban together, and bunch of these Boko Haram fighters and also the Al-Shabaab fighters, they're coming to Afghanistan for a couple of months, get trained, and going back to African countries. And if you see in Somalia and elsewhere, why they got robust and stronger, because the Taliban are in place. The ISIS, the Al-Qaeda Central is fully operable in Afghanistan. And then there is a huge cooperation in our structural cooperation, and also ideological cooperation and training, things like that. And that is why, if we see their achievements of the Al-Shabaab and other terrorist organizations in Africa, it is very strong. And you see that not only most of the African countries are partly will collapse, but it seems that it will have some adverse effect, not only in Africa, but on the Horn of Africa, when Horn of Africa would be problematic. And then, of course, it will affect some part of the Saudi or Middle East at all. So it means the Al-Qaeda slowly take over a lot of areas which were primarily or in the past controlled by the United States. And that was a second mistake of the United States. They left Somalia, and the Somalian force is not in a position to defend the country. And you see that sooner or later they will take over Somalia, and then when they take over Somalia, then there would be another force of them in Mozambique there would be, and then you say in Congo they will take over, and then the rest of African countries or the rest of the African continent would be under control of the either Al-Qaeda or the ISIS that will come under control of them. And you see that they're operating widely at a wide range, and also in the Middle Eastern countries. And you see that, and that would be a little bit hard enough for Israel to to comply with the development that in terms of the terrorism and extremism which is taking place in the region. And then of course we have like state-sponsored terrorist organizations, that is the Quds, and also some of the Taliban organizations. They're working together. Then we have Hamas, and then we have like Hezbollah. I think now the situation is like a hell. I mean, Africa's South Asia, West Asia, in Near East and Far East is turning to a hell, to be honest. I mean, according to the information I have, and according to the holistic studies I make, and also according to the assets that who are working, I mean, in these jihadi organizations, cooperating with me and providing me with the classified information.
So one of the things we're hearing about in terms of Al-Shabaab is their new relationship with the Houthis, who, by the way, also expressed mutual admiration with the Taliban. Is there a triangle we should be watching out for between the Houthis, Al-Shabaab, and the Taliban?
And of course, that is a new tactic, because this is the same. It was a little bit difficult at the very beginning that, like the Taliban, they are Sunni, and then then we have like Hezbollah, they're Shia, but they have a common enemy. If you remember back in 90s, when Osama bin Laden was isolated and he was driven from Saudi Arabia, he went to Africa, and that was a guy, I think, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was one of the person who was operating on behalf of Al-Qaeda, and he was, I mean, U.S. citizen. At the meantime, he was former member of the Egyptian army, and then moved to U.S. And then he was also operating, I mean, on behalf of the U.S. in Afghanistan, in collaboration with Al-Qaeda. He was running a business of Al-Qaeda, and he made it possible to meet Abu Imad. Abu Imad is one of the person representing Hezbollah in Africa. So he fixed a meeting between Abu Imad and also Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, and they discussed, and they said, of course, we don't share the same ideology or the same modus operandi. You are Sunnis, you're Shias, and we are Sunnis, but we have a common enemy. The common enemy is the United States. So we have to, or also, how can I say, Israel. And it is a time for us to join hands against the common enemy. And they did it. And there was a collaboration. And that is why we see that the Al-Qaeda family moved to Iran, because Hezbollah is controlled by Iran. And that is why the head of Al-Qaeda was for a long time in Iran. That was the first thing that they made it. And then there were cooperation, that the Al-Qaeda cooperation with the Iranian and Hezbollah, that it made it possible to open an opportunity for Taliban to cooperate with Iran and Hezbollah. And of course, when the first phase is done, the next phase is the Houthis. Houthis, of course, basically they are Sunni. They are Shia. They're not Sunni, but they have one common enemy. The common enemy is in the Red Sea, and also beyond the Red Sea is the like the Western world, and also the Israeli. Now it is time for Al-Shabaab, Taliban, and Houthis. I mean, basically, there are two different ideologies. The Taliban are Deobandis, very traditional ideology. Then we have the Al-Shabaab, which is more like the Salafi ideology, and then we have Houthis, which are, or who are more like Shia ideology, they have it. So how these three ideologies are collaborating, because they have common enemy. The common enemy is the Western world, and then they are, you could say, the satellite state. When they call it the satellite state of the West is Israel, and that is why it is a possibility, or not only possibility, it's a huge. That's a new tactic of the Taliban, Al-Shabaab, and also Houthis, to establish a new front to challenge the West and also Israel.
So here's two things. First of all, the Taliban was traditionally thought to be focused exclusively on Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan. Now we are seeing that they're expanding their reach internationally, just like ISIS-K and everyone else. The second issue, Afghanistan is a landlocked country. How could Taliban be useful to a maritime strategy against Israeli and Western shipping industry?
Actually, the Taliban in Afghanistan, they were insurgent groups. So you know that the terrorist organizations and the insurgent groups, like extremist insurgent groups, they share similar tactics or the similar process. So if you talk about the process, so they engage with the people, they find some grievance in the society, attract the people. When the people join their group, and they try to indoctrinate them. When they indoctrinate them, then, and of course they provide them or offer them the extreme version of the ideology, whatever ideology they have. And finally, to turn or to materialize this ideology or turn the ideology into practice, then you need for tactics. Whenever there's no possibility for political means or political or civil way to materialize it, then you need to use the violent way. What the violent way is, or the extreme violent way, which is terrorism or blowing himself up or suicide bombing. This is the same tactic, the same modus operandi, but only this a slightly difference is that the insurgent groups are mostly focusing on a specific geography. But international terrorist organizations, they don't focus on a specific geography. Rather, they are operating at an international arena. This is the slight difference between them. So at the time the Taliban, they were operating in Afghanistan, their modus operandi or their ideology, the tactics or the warfare strategy was to only focus within the border of the country. As soon as they got the power, now they think that it is incumbent on them, or this is their duty according to the Sharia and Islam. It is their duty to support wherever a Muslim brother is under or lives under oppression, whether it is a communist regime, whether it is a capitalist regime, or whether it is like a Jewish country, whatever. So they think that is the common thing, is that we have to defend their rights and get rid of the oppression and suppression of them, and to provide them with the opportunity to have their own state and their own society without the oppression. And that is why they call it the Amir al-Mu'minin. It means the Amir, when we call it the head, it's not only for Afghans, but the rest of the world. But of course, there is a slightly competition when you call it the ISIS-K or the ISIS. They also have the Caliphate, Islamic Caliphate, and they have the Al-Qaeda. They have also thinking of the world Islamic Caliphate in the Taliban about Islamic Emirate, is slightly different, but all these views are they want a world, ruled Islamic state, one state. there's only a slight difference in the in their approaches toward leading the world. But coming back to that, so they have the same ideology. However, they have different ideology, but they have the similar mission in the world. And that is why the Taliban say, okay, now it is time to get rid of the oppression of the Muslim countries, whether they are in Islamic country or the geographically Islamic country, or they are living in the infidel country, but we have to defend them. And then you see that this is the in landlocked country. This is the opportunity that they could move. I mean, use the Afghan borders from Afghanistan to Pakistan. They moved from Afghanistan to Pakistan, and they use this the different I mean water harbors like Qasim harbor in Karachi. They are going by boats and by ships to the rest of the world. And then also they use another way. I mean, they by road they are going to Iran and then move from Iran to other part of the world. And they use other way around as well. They go to, for example, to Iran, and from Iran to Iraq, and then from Iraq they go to Syria, and from Syria they go to Lebanon, and then from Lebanon they go again they go to Gaza or West Bank or elsewhere. They use this method, and other methods as well. They use the airway, and I mean by air from Kabul or from Kandahar. There are direct flights to Mashhad, and from Mashhad there is another opportunity. So by the Iranian, they put them like a commercial ship, and then they put these fighters within in capsules, like capsules, and then they bring them to the areas near to Gaza, and they drop these capsules in the water, and then deep divers of Hamas or Hezbollah, they're coming to these waters, and they take these capsules inside the Gaza Strip or somewhere else, and then they are ready to fight the Israelis. So this is the way they are using, and they are better enough. And meantime, as I said, they use the technology, but the technological way they are ready to like to operate through the dark net, and then they provide enough information for the self-radicalized or self-recruited, and meantime for those who are coming to Afghanistan to be trained and then go there. And then they provide them with the Afghan passports, with the Afghan identity cards, and then that make it possible for them. They would be for Iran and from other countries like how can I say, like that would be a deniability for these countries, that how to deny that they are not their citizens, but rather they are Afghans. However, they are from the Middle Eastern countries, they are from African countries, they are from the Indian subcontinent, and they are from Central Asian countries, or even they are from the Middle East countries, from the Arab countries. They're simply coming to Afghanistan, getting the Afghan papers, the Afghan passports, and getting the training, and then go with the Afghan passport wherever they want. So this is the way that they are operating.
So earlier on, you actually showed the video of the Iranian and the Taliban and maybe some Pakistanis together. You said that this was pointing to the October 7th planning, but what's the evidence that that meeting was about that, or that it was before October 7th, or that there is any sort of strategic cooperation in that realm as opposed to the general sharing of resources and so forth?
So actually, that was the a give and take between the Iranian and the Taliban.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, what I was told by assets, that the Iranian told them, so we are ready to help you defend against or to defeat the United States in Afghanistan if you cooperate us. So that was like a give and take. The Iranians provide him with the weaponries and whatever that was possible through their embassy, through their other like think tanks. They were operating in Afghanistan. There were radio stations. There were commercial centers operating, or even universities, schools run by the Iranian regime or by Quds. They were in Afghanistan. Even the Iranian providing like enough funding to the presidential palace of Afghanistan. And then in return, they received a lot of information from within. So they told the Taliban, if you could help us in our war, or in a battle in the Middle East against Israel, then we will be ready also to cooperate there. And that was at that time that the Taliban were also like in the interest of the Pakistan to support them, because they also want to get rid of the Afghan Republican government, which was in close cooperation with the United States. And that is why you see that there are a bunch of the Pakistanis and Iranians are present there, and they are discussing, like, you see that this is not an official visit. You see that they are sitting on the floor in a situation where something happened in a secret. So you see that, and that is why that was a sort of a cooperation. But to prove that was before, I mean, how they really planned this, the October 7th event, because in the video, no, it's not, I mean, spottable. One cannot spot it. We cannot read what is on the paper. But you see that the areas where the Taliban took over, specifically like Nimroz and then Uruzgan, there was the two provinces the Taliban took over at the very beginning, and then later on, the other provinces in Afghanistan collapsed, and then the Taliban took over. In these two provinces, both of them are close, bordered or having shared border with Iran, and some assets told me, and even I have some pictures of that, but I don't have it right away, where these training camps of this, Hamas and Hezbollah were established in these two provinces to be trained. It means these guys are coming to Afghanistan to talk to the people, or the border areas, talking to the Taliban. It's not about something else. We're talking not to the Pakistanis about something else. It was about the geopolitical, picture that Iran want to play it in the region.
So given this geopolitical complexities, how are all these groups, besides the criminal schemes with the diamonds that you've discussed, how are they able to fund themselves, and how are intelligence agencies managing to disrupt the financial networks, or not? Maybe they're not successful.
I think it's a little bit complicated to disrupt their financial support. The first thing is, as I said before, they are using blockchain technology to sell or to raise funding through the digital way. Even they're moving the money through the digital currency. It's a little bit more complicated. The second thing is, if you see that how these organizations are operating, or how they make their funding, there are some traditional ways. The traditional way is, of course, like robbery. They're doing it through the robbery. They're robbing banks. They're robbing the commercial centers, and like places like that. And then they also do it through the blackmailing. They arrest some people, they take over some people, and then they blackmail them, or simply they blackmail them and ask them for money. And then the other way is like kidnapping rich people in the society or investors in a society, and ask them for ransom, things like that. And then there is another opportunity for them to invest, or not only invest, but to be involved in a drug cartels and drugs. What I say, whether it is heroin, whether it is other narcotics, they are doing it in that way. And then there is another opportunity for them to use the antiquities and precious stones Wherever you see that in Syria, in Afghanistan, you see that all these the ISIS, they went where the historical places are. They just simply just rob all these historic places and then sell these items in international markets. And then in Afghanistan as well, there are a bunch of the precious stones in Afghanistan, like we have gold, we have some marbles, we have different precious stones, and then they use it that way. They do it. And one thing more, they also sort of like natural resources, like you could say that in fuel and gas and oil, specifically in the Middle East, there is another opportunity for them, like doing of the business of the textile industry. If you see that most of the ISIS, they were involved in a textile. They were involved with the bunch of the textile industry in Turkey. So they were simply bringing these textile or products from Syria and Iraq to Turkey, and in Turkey they process them and then they turn them to the clothes, and then these clothes that were sold in the how can I say the European market. And you see after the process, like a T-shirt, things like that, and also in the region, like in Pakistan, we have this. In Bangladesh, we have this, and also in India. The terrorist organizations are also, I mean, part of their funding is involvement in the textile industry. But most important thing is, by turning over in Afghanistan or conquering Afghanistan, they were able to do, proper businesses, proper contract, like extracting of the Afghan gas and oil with the Chinese companies, and also the Afghan marble, the Afghan lithium, the Afghan uranium, the Afghan, so many things that you see that they do it in that way. And also, you might have heard it, like in North Korea, there is a committee called I think 37 or 36. This is the committee of the North Korea. They are operating proper business, like they're running hotels, they're running restaurants, they're running business centers outside North Korea. They're doing it in possibly in Japan. They're doing it in some of the European countries. In Australia, they're operating. They're also operating in the Middle East, and all this money through this proper registered business, they're coming to North Korea, and that is why the U.S. and the West is putting a lot of sanctions on North Korea, but still the North Korea make it possible through the foreign currency to run the government. This is the same, the Taliban having their own, or these terrorist organizations, they have their own, proper business. They're running proper business in Middle East countries, in Qatar. They're running a proper business in Abu Dhabi, and they're in Dubai and elsewhere. And so many places they have their proper businesses. And that is why for the US, it would be a little bit difficult to crack down on the proper business where the money is properly, transferred through banks and everything, because they're legitimate paper and they're legit businesses. That would be a little bit difficult for them to get rid of or to manage them. But by the way, this is the only thing that they could do it through the intelligence work that they find it, and with the cooperation with the like Interpol, like Europol, and also with the UN. If they join hands, in that case, it would be possible for them to, at least if they cannot get rid of their financial, financial support or financial or funding, but at least they could disrupt it through the technology and through the intelligence work that down the road that make it a little bit harder for the terrorist organization to keep money, to move money, or to process the money for their financial, to finance their operations or activities across the world.
Finally, given this extremely complex scenario where all these organizations are not only uniting forces, but are finding ways to circumvent sanctions, legitimize themselves, and essentially outsmart the United States and other governments, what do you see the future trends in intelligence and counterterrorism operations over the in that area over the next decades? Do you think that there will be some innovative way of disrupting these alliances, infiltrating them, pitting them against each other? Do you think there'll be a way of separating them from their state backers and sponsors, or do you see it the other way? Do you see intelligence and counterterrorism efforts continuously lagging behind until it becomes too late and these networks become dominant?
As you see in the United States, you are the U.S. citizen and you're operating from the U.S. The U.S. policymakers and the statement the politicians, they're busy enough for the elections. For them is what is really interesting to convince the American people, because the American people are no longer interested in the war on terror. They think that they spend 20 years, with the 20 years of the war on terror, the result, they had no result at all. And you see that this front against the terrorism is not only, that only not make it, vulnerable to get rid of the terrorist organization, but made it possible for the terrorist organization to flourish. And that is why the American people no longer interested for another war, whether it is about against the terrorist organizations or against a state. If you see that is why the U.S. is trying to just distance itself from the live war or from deployment of its forces, whether it's the Middle East or even in European countries. However, this Middle East and Europe is from the geostrategic point of view, it matters for the United States, but still they're not paying a lot of attention, because the U.S. public is not interested in another war that should be fought by the American people. For the American, the interest is how to revive the economy, how to flourish how to create jobs, how to provide the opportunity for a middle class to flourish, to make the opportunity at least to be in a better position. And that is why their focus is of the American policymaker is a lot more turned to the internal issues and primarily on an elections period. And then, as I said before, their national security priority is not focused on countering the terrorist organization or insurgent groups. They have some other national priorities. And then coming back to the other countries, when the U.S. is less interested. One time I was talking to a German lawmaker, and I told them there was like rumors that the American will leave Afghanistan. I told them, okay, what would be your position when the American leaves? He told me, whenever we were invited by the American, and we are there in Afghanistan because of the American. When the American leaves, then we don't have to stay there. We have no stake in Afghanistan. So when the U.S. does not have any stakes in counterterrorism or in the region, then the Western world, specifically Europe, also does not have any stake in it. And that is why you see that the trend of the counterterrorism is developing negatively. Then the other countries, like Russia. Russia is already involved in Ukraine and also in Syria. So they are also not interested to directly involved in counterterrorism. Only matters China. China itself is not trying to be involved in counterterrorism. Rather, they are trying to support like regimes which are totalitarian regimes because they are simply or easily managed, and they are cheap enough to run in terms of the democratic regimes, and also they are a long-term regime or a stable regime from political point of view, and that is why they are less interested in counterterrorism. In the next decade, the trend shows that the terrorism, I mean, this front is flourishing in developing in a negatively, and of course, as I said at the very beginning, we people in the West, if we don't take, I mean, the right measure at the right time, the second 9/11 will happen. But that would be very, very, I mean, risky and very lethal because on that time when it happened, they did not have the support of technology, and they didn't have this opportunity to be involved at a greater level. But today's terrorism is quite different from the terrorism in the 90s and also terrorism in the 20s. And terrorism, I mean, at early 21, today's terrorism is like invisible, and today's terrorism is playing with the dark net, where they have their own platforms for radicalizations, they have their own platform for trainings, they have their own platform for I mean, providing with financial support, providing with the weaponry, things like that. So today's terms is more lethal, more sophisticated in terms of technology, in terms of the warfare, and in terms of the facing the enemy, which is the West, or facing the how can I say the symmetric warfare technology, or the symmetric army, or the symmetric battle strategy. That is why I think in the next 10 years or the next decade, the trend will develop, unfortunately, negatively.
So finally, given that we are seeing state actors like the Russian GRU, like the Iranian Quds, like the Pakistani ISI, with very significant, sophisticated, state-backed intelligence capabilities, working with the Taliban and other terrorist organizations. What happens when you put together these resources, the intelligence targeting methods and espionage techniques of state actors, and the adaptability, flexibility, and unpredictability of these terrorist groups? Do you think they'll become more adept and successful at penetrating Western societies and jointly being weaponized for violent attacks?
Yeah, of course. What I think is that the issue is when they are, I mean, the terrorist organization, when they operate individually, that would be a little bit complicated for them to operate across the world, because in terms of the training places, in terms of the documents which they get, in terms of the financial support, in terms of the like moving them or transporting them, that would be really difficult for the terrorist organizations to operate individually or independently. When there would be a backup from the state, when the state sponsored them, or there would be collaboration between the terrorist organization and states, in terms of having joint efforts or joint how can I say missions and objectives, that would be really complicated for the Western world to defeat them, because there would be all the time deniability, like that they are operating, but they simply says they are not belonging to us. Like the same, like in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda is operating, ISIS is operating, and a bunch of the terrorist organizations are operating. I mean, getting trained and everything. But at the end of the day, when you ask the Taliban, they simply say they deny it. And they say, oh, there's no terrorist organization, and we don't allow these terrorist organizations to operate on the soil of Afghanistan. So that makes it a little bit or more complicated. That was the same like when the Pakistanis, they provided safe havens for Taliban and also provided safe haven for the previous Mujahideen groups or these other Islamic tactical forces to fight the Soviets. Whenever they were put in pressure, they simply denied. However, there was, without the support or state support of Pakistan, it was impossible for the Mujahideen to take over, or it was also impossible for the Taliban to take over. So when there's a state sponsorship that smooth the way, that make it possible for the terrorist organization to take over. And that is why it is a huge challenge for the Western world when there would be collaboration between states and non-state actors. And when there would be a collaboration between Shia state and Sunni state, when there would be collaboration between Sunni state and also Shia terrorist organization and vice versa. And when we put them all combined, so then you see that how difficult would be for the Western world to counter them or to get rid of them. So I think the future for the Western world is bleaker as before, and that is why I think it's a little bit complicated for the Western world to confront such a trend when there is a state-sponsored terrorism and also state actors and non-state actors involved. I mean, combined or together.
Well, thank you very much for these disturbing but fascinating insights. Clearly, there's a lot to process, and I'm hoping that these videos and photographs will provide, and documents will provide the evidence that will wake up some of the members of the intelligence community and governments to the reality that we need to be fighting on multiple fronts at the same time, especially since many of these fronts are actually part of the same war. They're not different battles. You cannot anymore easily separate the great power competition with Russia and China from the Taliban or terrorist organizations, because as we have seen, these countries are openly showing support to these terrorist networks against the West. And that's something to be taken of very, very seriously going forward, because we will probably see much more aggressive action in the future.
Yeah, thank you again for having me for today's discussion. Actually, that was only tip of the iceberg. So there are many disturbing videos. There are many disturbing pictures, images, and there are many disturbing like evidence and documents which I have. And as I said, this is only a tip of the iceberg. When they would be, and without a cooperation, without joining hand, it is impossible for the government actors, I mean, the Western world to get rid of these organizations unless we collaborate. So as I said, I'm ready, and even you yourself, there would be an opportunity for collaboration. So I'm all the time open for talks and all the time for providing more evidences, even share tactics, how to collaborate and how to get rid of them. Because as I said at the very beginning, there are some assets within these jihadi organizations operating, and they are sharing, I mean, good and interesting information with me and through me to the organization they need it.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing this cooperation and hopefully having more opportunities to take action and not merely not merely hear about it in the future. And for those everyone watching, please follow Ajmal Sohail. Be in touch with him if you have any means to follow through on some of this very important information. And stay tuned, of course, for next week's episode of the Washington Outsider at 9 p.m. Tuesday night. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining.